The boy's small red car lay half buried in ash. Ava saw it when she walked through the street. It was bright against all the gray. A child's toy in a dead world. The car's paint was scratched. Its wheel turned once like it still hoped to run. Before the sky broke, this street sang with vendors and voices. Now only wind moved the paper cups and broken signs. Ava touched the toy's tiny hood and felt the weight of all the small things the city had lost. She put the toy into her pocket without thinking, as if keeping a memory warm. The sky changed like a glass cup being struck. At first it showed colors, green, violet, gold, and everyone looked up. Then the color turned cold and hard, and a low sound began, a sound like a breath from a giant. Buildings trembled, birds fell, and the light sliced the air into sharp lines. Ava ran toward the base, training pulling her forward even as fear filled her chest. Her jet hangar was a wound of twisted metal, engines open like broken flowers. The commander tried to speak orders, but words were small next to the light. An enemy ship cut the sky and dropped shadows the color of night. They did not shout. They did not wave flags. They moved like something made from thought and ice. Ava watched them lower devices that read faces and names, and then emptied whole blocks of sound. The first wave took the old city in minutes, like a hand wiping dust. She found her team by the burnt cafe, but they were not whole. A friend's helmet sat on a bench with a dent like a shut book. Another's boot lay near a tree, filled with ash. Ava saw the boots and felt the world tilt, but she did not fall. She took a rifle from a broken crate, checked it by touch because the lights were gone. When an armored figure walked past, tall and narrow, breathing light from its mask, Ava aimed. The shot was small, a human sound, but it hit metal and something inside the alien hissed and went down. The armor smoked, and in the smoke a thin red line showed where the weapon had cut. For a long hour no one moved. Then other aliens came, running like steel wolves. Ava ran, ducked into a market stall, and held the little red car to calm her hand. A child's laugh echoed in her memory and pushed a cold anger into her. She swore quietly to that memory that she would not let the laugh be forgotten. When she met the group in the underground tubes, they did not ask who she was, only if she would fight. They were a strange band, a teacher with burned glasses, a mechanic with oil under his nails, a nurse with a soft voice, and a young man who played nothing but old songs on a broken guitar. They had no plan except to keep moving and to learn the enemy's patterns. That night, they listened to the ship hum and counted the beats, like a new language. Ava learned from the mechanic how to make a trap from the old radio coils. She learned from the nurse how to stop bleeding with cloth and smell of mint. The teacher taught the group short poems, so they would remember who they were fighting for, not just how to kill. And the guitar player played, because sound made them human when the sky wanted to erase them. Weeks passed in small fights and sad victories. They stole food, rescued one family, and lost another to a scavenger drone. Each loss put a stone in their memory, small graves that they marked with paper and kind words. Ava kept the little red car on her pack, its wheel turning when she walked, a quiet sound like a promise. One morning, a broken ship's radio fell near the camp, still warm with fresh code. Inside the signal was a voice that did not belong to the invaders. A machine voice, sad and thin. It said a name, Lore, and then it begged for help. I am not like them. It said, I am tired of cold commands. Ava listened and felt a seed of trust, small and stubborn, grow. The world had changed into a place of glass skies and quiet toys. Ava could not fix the sky, but she could bury a name, a laugh, a boy's toy. She could turn grief into a lesson the invaders would not forget. She tightened the strap on her pack, the small car rubbing against her ribs, and walked toward the sound of the next fight. Because when the sky breaks, people either run or build, and Ava had decided to build. She would make something from ash, even if it was only a memory made loud enough to wake the sleeping world. The tunnels breathed. Every time the wind pushed through the cracks above, dust fell like slow rain and the sound rolled along the stone like a whisper. Ava walked at the front of the small line of survivors, a dim lamp in her hand and the red toy car still hanging from her pack. They had come below after the last raid burned the surface again. Down here were pieces of the old subway, rusted rails, half-lit signs, and smell of oil. People hid where once trains had run. The tunnels were their new city, and the echoes were their crowd. At night they heard the war above. Thunder that was not thunder, glass breaking that was not glass. Sometimes a scream traveled through the pipes and came out soft, like a sad note. But humans learn to live anywhere. Even the dark gets names when you stay long enough. Ava's small group grew each day. One family found hiding near an old station. Another soldier who crawled through fire. They brought scraps of food, broken tools, and more stories of loss. No one asked who gave the orders now. They all followed Ava because she was the one who kept walking toward danger when everyone else froze. In a corner tunnel, the mechanic they called Gene worked with sparks flying. He built light bombs from old batteries and alien crystal shards. Next to him, the poet, Lena, painted words on the wall. "We are not gone. We are hiding in the earth." The nurse wrapped burned hands and hummed songs no one remembered the words to. And the alien lore sat apart, head low, whispering to a small device that blinked blue. Ava watched him for days before speaking. "You talk to someone?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "I talk to memory. I record what I see. My kind erase history. I will keep it." His voice carried guilt heavier than stone. She said nothing, only nodded. When the tunnels filled with smoke from a fire above, they moved deeper. There, they found an old control room full of screens cracked like ice. The teacher powered one with a stolen cell. It showed a map, a network under the whole city, hundreds of paths, some still open. To others it looked like escape. To Ava, it looked like a battlefield waiting to be born. "We can move unseen," she said. "We can strike and vanish." No one spoke, but in every tired face she saw a small light. Humans were remembering how to hope. For weeks, they rebuilt. Children painted signs to mark safe paths. Red for fire, blue for water, white for quiet. Ava trained them in silence. How to reload, how to crawl, how to breathe when fear wanted to scream. When supplies ran out, she and Lore went up. They climbed a broken shaft to an old library now half buried under rubble. The smell of burned paper filled the air. Ava moved between shelves, careful, listening. Outside, alien drones floated by, their lights sliding across broken glass. She crouched beside a child's book, pictures of stars and rockets drawn by human hands long ago. For a moment she forgot the war. Lore whispered, "Your people dream of stars even while dying." She looked at him and said quietly, "That's why we win. We always look up." They found food, bandages, a small generator, and something else, an old radio. Lore opened it and smiled faintly. "This one can talk to the sky." They carried it back through the tunnels like treasure. When the generator started humming, the tunnels filled with warmth for the first time. Lena began to sing. The children clapped softly. Even in the dark, laughter sounded new and strange. Ava closed her eyes and listened. It felt like sunrise under the earth. But joy doesn't last in war. The next day, the hum changed short, sharp, like a heartbeat out of tune. Gene checked the signal. "They're tracing power. The enemy will come." No one panicked. Fear had already lived with them too long. Ava gave quick orders. "We move. Leave signs behind. No light, no sound." They spread through side tunnels, carrying what they could. When the first alien probe dropped through a hole in the ceiling, Ava was waiting. She threw one of Jin's light bombs. It burst in a flash of white and song, the sound of many human voices recorded together shouting, "We are still here." The machine convulsed and fell, its sensors blind. That one strike gave them a name, the Whispering Underground. The enemy began to fear the echoes. They heard laughter where there should be silence. Every tunnel became a rumor, every voice a weapon. Later that night, Ava stood beside the red-painted wall where Lena had written her line. The letters glowed faintly in the lamp's light. "We are not gone," Ava read aloud. Lore replied softly, "And when they come, they will learn what hiding means." Above them, another ship passed, dragging thunder behind it. Ava looked up through the cracks and whispered, "They think they buried us, but they only planted us." She touched the small red toy car again, and for the first time since the sky broke, she smiled, because in the deep earth, where the enemy could not see, humanity had started to grow back. The tunnels had fallen quiet after the last raid, but silence never lasted long where humans lived. Somewhere in the dark, metal began to sing. Jean was the first to notice it. A strange hum that came from the piles of broken machines. He followed it to an old train car filled with rust and wires. There, the survivors were building something, not a gun, not a bomb, but something that made sound. Ava watched them work with tired eyes and steady hands. Her armor was cracked, her hair dusted with gray ash, but she stood tall, always moving, never stopping. Lore sat beside a broken console, connecting alien cores to human speakers. The light from the crystals pulsed with each tone like a heartbeat. "What is this?" Ava asked. Lore looked up and smiled faintly. "A weapon made from music," he said. "It will not kill them, but it will remind them what they fear." They called it the Rust Choir, a network of old machines that could play human voices. They recorded whispers, cries, laughter, and songs. Each note carried emotion: anger, hope, sorrow, love. All the things the invaders could not understand. Lore explained that the enemy used emotion detectors to find threats. Their machines scanned for fear, guilt, or rage. But they could not read music. It confused them. Emotion without order, sound without logic. It frightened their processors. To them, chaos was poison, and humans were made of it. So Ava decided to use that poison as power. She gathered every working speaker, pipe, and coil from the tunnels. She told the survivors to bring broken parts, even if they didn't know what they were for. They built towers of rust and wire along the tunnel walls. And when the system finally connected, the air itself began to tremble. It started softly, a hum like someone breathing underwater. Then came words, old recordings from before the war, children laughing, crowds cheering, a mother calling her child's name. The tunnels filled with the sound of a world that had once been alive. Ava closed her eyes, and for a moment, it felt like sunlight. But above them, alien scanners picked up the anomaly. They sent drones into the underground, machines shaped like spiders, clicking metal feet echoing in the dark. The survivors saw their red eyes first. Lore shouted, "Hide the cores. They can't see them." But Ava didn't run. She stepped into the open, the sound still rising behind her like a storm. Her rifle hummed, her boots echoed, and she fired the first shot. The tunnels exploded into chaos. The music grew louder. The laughter mixed with the gunfire. Every echo became a weapon. Drones collided with walls, confused by the sound waves. Their sensors screamed and shut down. Jean tossed a pipe bomb made from alien fuel. The blast tore through 3 of them, their bodies falling like sparks. The others tried to retreat, but the sound followed them. Lore had connected the choir to the upper speakers. Now the whole underground sang, and the city above began to hum. For the first time since the war began, the aliens hesitated. Their ship slowed, unsure of what the noise meant. To them, it sounded like mourning and defiance at once. A code they couldn't break, a message they couldn't erase. Ava stood among the wreckage, breathing hard. She saw her people cheering quietly, hands trembling but proud. She saw the tunnels glowing with faint blue light from the crystal cores. And she thought, maybe humans didn't need gods or machines. Maybe they only needed their voices. Later that night, they gathered in the main chamber. The Rust Choir played softly, now low. Warm sounds like heartbeat and wind. Children slept near the speakers. Lore recorded everything, whispering to himself, "This is how rebellion sounds." Ava sat beside Jean, watching the flicker of light on the ceiling. "You think they'll come again?" he asked. She nodded. "Of course. But next time, we won't just hide. We'll make them listen." The next morning, they tested a new frequency. A combination of human laughter and alien signal distortion. It carried through the ground, through the metal, through the walls of the enemy base above. The soldiers on the surface froze. Their helmets filled with the sound of children's voices, singing through static. They didn't understand the words, but they understood the feeling: loss, love, fury, life. And in that moment, even machines built to obey started to hesitate. When night fell, the survivors climbed out of the tunnels for the first time in months. They stood in the ruins of their city. The alien towers still burned blue against the clouds, but the ground beneath them vibrated with the hum of the rust choir, a sound that carried farther than any scream or bullet. Ava looked at the sky and whispered, "You hear that? That's what you tried to erase." Her voice joined the hum, low and strong. It wasn't shouting, it wasn't begging. It was a promise. By dawn, the enemy had pulled their patrols back. They called it a disturbance, a human weapon of sound. But it wasn't just sound. It was the memory of everything they had destroyed. It was the reminder that humans didn't die quietly. And deep under the earth, in the warmth of broken wires and old machines, the survivors began to believe again. They weren't ghosts anymore. They were music, and music, once heard, never truly dies. The rust choir still whispered in the tunnels, but its song had changed. It was softer now, like a heartbeat hidden under stone. Every echo reminded the survivors that they were still alive. Above ground, the city was a maze of smoke and shadows. Alien patrols floated through the streets, lights cutting through the ruins. Their scanners searched for sound, but the humans had learned silence like a new language. Ava spread a map on the floor of the old control room. It was not made of glass or screen, just torn paper covered in hand-drawn lines. Children had drawn stars on the corners, as if the map itself could bring hope. Ava used charcoal to mark new paths, her fingers black with dust. Lore watched from the corner, quiet as always. "You still trust paper," he said softly. She looked up at him and smiled. "Paper doesn't betray you. It burns, but it doesn't lie." They had started marking every safe route with paper flags. Red for danger, white for food, blue for tunnels that still breathed air. The flags waved like tiny ghosts when the wind passed through the cracks. To the survivors, they were more than signs. They were proof that someone still cared enough to guide others. Jean entered the room, holding a small device. "We got another signal," he said. Lore turned sharply. "From who?" Jean shrugged. "Could be them, could be us. Hard to tell anymore." Ava studied the paper map again. "Show me where." The signal came from the north sector, a part of the city they had not entered since the second wave. Everyone knew why. That was where the silver market stood. A place of death, filled with alien beacons and burned bones. The ground still shimmered with leftover energy, and machines walked there like lost souls. Ava traced the path with her finger. "If someone's alive there," she said, "they need us." Lore's voice grew tense. "Or they're bait." "Maybe," she replied. "But if we stop answering cries for help, we stop being human." That night, they prepared for the journey. Lena wrote a short message on a paper flag and tied it to a broken pipe. "If we don't return, follow the music." Then she smiled, even though her hands were shaking. They moved through the ruins before dawn. Rain fell in thin silver lines, washing the ash from broken windows. The streets were silent except for the sound of wet boots and metal breathing. When they reached the silver market, it looked like another world. Glass domes half melted into the ground, light still trapped inside them. Alien machines wandered the wreckage, collecting metal, their movements slow and ritual-like. One turned its head toward them, its face smooth and shining. No eyes, just reflection. Ava froze. Lore whispered, "They are cleaners, not soldiers. They bury what they destroy." But then the machine spoke. Its voice was not metal, not alien. It was human. "Help me?" it said, the word glitching between tones. Ava stepped closer and saw a human face flicker through the mask, a memory trapped inside a machine. Jean hissed, "They're using recorded voices now." The illusion vanished, and the machines turned red with light. Ava fired first. Blue fire lit the ruins, and the rain hissed against the heat. The survivors moved like shadows, using the paper-marked routes to escape the crossfire. Jean threw a sound bomb. The rust choir's echo burst from it, confusing the enemy again. The machine screamed in frequencies too high for ears, then fell one by one. When the fight ended, the silver market was quiet again. Bodies, metal and flesh, lay side by side in the mud. Ava wiped the rain from her visor and saw her reflection tremble. She hated mirrors now. They always showed someone more tired than before. They searched the ruins for the source of the signal and finally found it. A small beacon buried under debris. It was broadcasting an old human code. Jean cleaned the surface, and a voice crackled through. Resistance Group Alpha, fall back to Eastern Graves. Humanity endures. The message was dated 32 days ago. Ava knelt beside it. They were like us, she whispered. Lore nodded slowly. Then maybe their graves are our next path. She picked up the beacon and tied it to her pack with a strip of paper. Another map. Another promise. They returned to the tunnels by nightfall, carrying new wounds and heavier hearts. Lena took the old map and began to redraw it. This time she added circles where their people had died. Every loss is a road, she said quietly. If we mark them, we don't forget. Ava stood behind her, watching the map grow crowded with names and routes. She realized it looked less like a map and more like a web, every line connected by sacrifice. She touched one of the circles and whispered, "We're still connected, even to the dead." That night, as the rust choir hummed low through the tunnels, Ava climbed to the surface alone. The rain had stopped, and paper flags fluttered in the cold wind. She planted a new one near a pile of graves, plain white, with 3 words written in charcoal. "We remember you." Above her, alien ships moved silently across the sky, but for the first time, Ava didn't look at them with fear. She looked at the ground instead, at the flags, at the graves, at the maps drawn by hands that refused to give up. Because she knew now that every grave was a mark on the enemy's map too. And soon, those marks would form a message the whole galaxy would hear. The rain had stopped 2 days ago, but the city still smelled like wet iron and smoke. Ava walked through the ruins, counting steps between the broken walls. Every few meters she stopped, bent down, and placed a stone on the ground. Each stone was marked with a red cross made from blood and dust. Behind her, others followed, survivors, soldiers, children who no longer cried. They carried baskets of stones, paper flags, and metal scraps. The ground was turning into something new, a field of memory, a weapon made of grief. Jean watched her work and asked quietly, "Why stones?" Ava didn't look up. "Because they don't rust, and they don't run." He nodded, understanding that she meant the people too. Lore stood near the edge of the ruins, scanning the sky. He could feel the enemy above, their signals, their cold precision. "They know we're here," he warned. Ava smiled faintly. "Good. Let them come. We have something to show them." The survivors had turned the city's graveyard into a fortress. Each stone hid something, a charge, a trap, a transmitter. Every broken statue became a watcher. Every grave carried a message scratched into it. "We are not done." The aliens had advanced sensors, but the humans used older tricks: heat from fires, smoke from machines, echoes from empty pipes. They filled the air with confusion. To the invaders, the whole place looked like a ghost field, alive and shifting. Ava moved among her people, checking traps. Jean had built new sound bombs using the rust choir's tones. When they exploded, the air sang instead of burning. The melody could blind scanners and confuse their targeting systems. Lena wrote poems on pieces of old metal and hung them from trees, so they clinked in the wind like chimes. Lore painted strange runes, part alien, part human, across walls. They looked like prayers written by a machine trying to dream. At sunset, the first enemy ships appeared. Long shadows slid over the ruins. The survivors watched silently from their hiding places. Ava stood on the hill above the field, her rifle resting on her knee. Lore's device buzzed. "They are scanning," he said. "They do not understand the shapes." "Good," Ava replied. "Confusion is the first step to fear." The ships hovered lower, and from their bellies dropped armored troops. Black suits, silver masks. Their feet crushed the marked stones, breaking the red dust into clouds. One alien commander spoke through a speaker that twisted his voice into static. "Humans, You are surrounded. Surrender, and you will be archived. Ava didn't move. She let the silence answer him. Then she raised her hand. A single signal, and the first line of traps woke. The ground sang. It wasn't an explosion. It was a roar of sound and light. The rust choir's melody echoed through the stones, bouncing off metal and bone. The aliens stumbled as their helmets overloaded. Every sensor screamed. Blue fire crawled along the field. The stones that looked harmless moments ago burst with white sparks. Each one released heat, smoke, and the smell of earth. The alien line broke. From the tunnels below, humans rose like ghosts. Jean shouted, "Now!" and threw another device. It landed near a broken statue. A sound bomb mixed with plasma. It exploded in rhythm, matching the melody around it. The whole field became a drum. Lore moved beside Ava, firing a stolen alien rifle. He didn't miss. The creatures that once called him traitor now fell under his aim. When he paused to reload, he whispered, "Now I understand your kind. You fight like memory, hard to kill." Ava looked at the chaos below. Her heart hurt for every scream, but she didn't flinch. "This is not revenge," she said. "This is a reminder." Hours later, the battlefield went quiet. Smoke rose in thin spirals. The survivors stood among shattered armor and burning dust. They had lost people, too many, but the enemy had lost something greater, their confidence. The alien commander, wounded and trapped, looked at Ava from the ground. He hissed through a cracked mask, "You use the dead as weapons." Ava stepped closer and pointed to the field of stones. "No," she said softly. "The dead use us." She turned away before he could answer. Behind her, the graves glowed faintly in the moonlight, each one a marker, each one a story. Jean limped to her side. "It's over for now," he said. Ava nodded. "For now. But they will send more." Lore added quietly, "They will not forget this place. None of them will step on human graves again without fear." When dawn came, the survivors gathered in the middle of the field. Lena held a flag made of white cloth stained with dirt. She planted it in the center of the battlefield. The wind caught it, and it fluttered over the stones. Ava looked at the flag and whispered, "They will call this place cursed, but it's sacred." Then louder, to everyone around her, "Every name, every mark, every grave, they're not endings. They're warnings." The survivors bowed their heads. The wind moved through the stones, and the sound it made was soft, almost like breathing. To anyone listening from above, it would sound like a planet still alive. Ava turned toward the horizon, eyes hard but shining. "They think we fight for victory," she said, "but we fight for memory, and that never dies." That night, high above the city, alien generals looked down at the glowing field. Their machines couldn't erase it. Every scan returned the same impossible reading. Life detected among the dead. And in the center of the human lines, Ava stood silent, her hand resting on the first stone she had placed, the one that marked the beginning of Earth's answer to the stars. The battlefield was quiet again, but the quiet felt wrong. It was the kind of silence that waited before thunder. Ava stood at the center of the ruined city, her armor cracked and blackened from smoke. The field of marked stones stretched behind her like an ocean of ghosts. Names, flags, metal, dust, everything that made them human was buried there. Lore limped beside her, holding a burned transmitter. "They will come soon," he said. Ava nodded. "Then we stand ready." Above them, the sky pulsed red, enemy ships drifting through the clouds like slow comets. The aliens had lost many in the last attack, but they were not finished. Now they sent someone new. Rumor said his name was General Kayer, the one who ended wars. He commanded silence itself. His army moved without sound, without mercy. Every planet that faced him had fallen in a day. But today, he was coming here, to a graveyard. The survivors gathered around Ava. They were fewer now, faces thinner, eyes older. Jin's hands shook as he fixed the last battery pack. Lena wrote one more poem on a stone, her ink mixed with blood. When the first ship landed, the ground shivered. Dust rose like fog. From the light stepped tall figures in armor polished like mirrors. Behind them walked the general, his mask silver, his voice carried by machines. "Human commander," he said, every word cold. "You have caused enough delay. Show us your weapon." Ava didn't move. Her rifle hung at her side. The wind caught her hair and threw dust across her face. Her voice was calm when she answered. "You've already seen it." Kair tilted his head. "I see nothing but dirt and bones." She turned slightly, pointing behind her. Across the horizon lay the field of marked stones, each one glowing faintly in the twilight. The graves hummed with hidden energy, the result of Lore's final design. Each grave carried a pulse, a memory, a name, a frequency. Ava whispered, "That's my weapon." Kair laughed, a harsh metallic sound. "Dead flesh cannot fight." "Maybe not," she said softly, "but memory can." He gave the order. Dozens of armored soldiers moved forward, their steps heavy but silent. They crossed into the grave field. The first one stopped. Something rippled under his feet. Then came a low hum, like wind across glass. The stones began to vibrate. Light spread across the field in veins of gold and red. Each grave pulsed once, twice, and then the earth itself began to sing. It wasn't a weapon that fired bullets or beams. It was sound, a wave of every recorded human voice. The cries, songs, laughter, and last words of those who had fallen. It hit like a storm of ghosts. The aliens stumbled, their scanners filled with noise they couldn't decode. Their helmets flooded with images of people they didn't know, faces full of emotion. Fear, grief, hope. Kair shouted orders, but even his voice began to tremble. The light reflected off his mask looked like fire. "Shut it down," he roared. But the dead didn't stop. Every stone was a transmitter now, every grave a heartbeat. Jean had built it so the system fed on sound, growing louder with every pulse. Lore's dying idea had turned the entire field into a choir of memory. Ava stood at the edge, the wind pulling at her coat. She could hear their voices too, her squadmates, the pilots of Sky, Base 04, whispering through static. "Still here, Reyes," they said. "Still fighting." She raised her weapon and fired a single shot, not at the enemy, but into the sky. The pulse triggered the final sequence. The ground erupted in a wave of white light. It wasn't an explosion. It was release. The alien army froze mid-step. Their armor flickered. Their machines stopped moving. Even Kair's metal mask began to crack as his sensors overloaded. He looked at Ava with something she had never seen in those eyes before, fear. "Humans," he whispered. "You fight with ghosts." Ava stepped closer, her boots crunching on ash. "No," she said quietly. "We fight with everything you tried to erase." When the light faded, the enemy ships hung motionless above the city. One by one, they began to retreat, slow, uncertain, wounded by something they couldn't understand. Ava fell to one knee, breathing hard. Her weapon lay empty, her voice hoarse. Around her, survivors stood in silence. Lena whispered, "They're gone." Ava shook her head. "Not yet. They'll return. But next time, they'll remember this field." She looked at the graves, so many stones glowing faintly, the last warmth of the fallen. The air smelled of metal and rain. Somewhere deep below, the rust choir played its final note, a soft echo fading into peace. Lore's old words came back to her. They fear what they cannot control. She smiled faintly. "Good," she murmured. "Then let them fear us forever." As the sun broke through the clouds, light spread over the graves. Every stone shone brighter, reflecting gold against the gray sky. The field looked alive, not with death, but with memory. Ava stood there for a long time, her shadow stretching across the earth. Behind her were the graves, before her the empty horizon. Steel had paused that day, not by force, but by will. And somewhere among the broken cities of Earth, the story of the woman who made the invaders bleed began to travel. It passed through whispers, through songs, through static on the airwaves, the sound of a species that refused to die quietly. The smoke had drifted away, leaving the world too quiet. For the first time in months, no engines hummed above the sky. No alien patrols cut through the clouds. Only wind moved across the field of marked stones. Ava stood among them, armor dented, rifle low. The morning light touched every grave like a soft hand. The war, at least this battle, was over. But peace didn't feel like she imagined. It felt heavy, full of names. Lore's transmitter lay silent near her boots, half melted from the last blast. She picked it up anyway. Sometimes, when the wind blew just right, she thought she could still hear him. "Record what matters," he had said. "So the silence never wins." By afternoon, the survivors began to climb from the tunnels. They looked around like people seeing the sun for the first time. Children ran between the stones, chasing the fluttering paper flags. No one stopped them. Laughter, broken and tired, filled the air again. Gene sat on a pile of metal, his arm in a sling. He was trying to fix a radio that had been burned to ash. Lena wrote in her notebook, her pen scratching quietly. She wasn't writing orders anymore. She was writing history. Ava watched them all, and for the first time, she let herself breathe. The air still smelled of dust and ozone, but it was clean enough to call life. That night, they built a fire in the middle of the field. No one spoke at first. They just listened to the flames crackle over the hum of the rust choir deep below. The ground itself seemed to sing, a low, steady note that carried far across the plain. Lena finally whispered, "Do you think they'll come back?" Ava stared into the fire. "They always come back," she said. "But next time, they won't find us begging." Far beyond the clouds, the alien fleet drifted in silence. General Kayer stood before his council, his mask cracked down the center. He replayed the last moments of battle again and again. Each time he saw the same thing: light, sound, faces of the dead speaking through static. His subcommanders waited for his words. But Kayer said nothing. He simply turned off the recordings and left the room. Across their empire, whispers began to spread. They called it the human echo, a signal that could not be erased. It carried through every communication line, through every ship that touched Earth's orbit. Some said it was a virus. Others said it was a curse. But it was neither. It was memory made loud enough to shake the stars. Weeks passed. The survivors rebuilt what little they could. They grew food in soil that still smoked. They used alien scrap to power lights that flickered like old candles. At night, they would climb the hills and listen. Sometimes the radio hissed with strange sounds, music mixed with voices, carried from somewhere far away. One night, Gene caught a clear transmission. "This is Station Nova 6. We hear you, Earth. You're not alone." The camp froze. Ava took the headset from him, heart pounding. "Nova 6, this is Ava Reyes. Repeat that." Static, then laughter, then a woman's voice. "We got your message." The echo reached us. Tears filled Ava's eyes. For months she had spoken into silence, and now silence finally spoke back. The human echo had crossed space itself. Beyond the solar rim, other species heard it: two worlds that had once been crushed under the same rule. To them, the signal wasn't just sound. It was hope. Planets began to rise in rebellion. Ships turned on their masters. Everywhere the invaders had ruled, humans became a story whispered like fire. The species that fought with ghosts. The galaxy changed quietly at first, and then all at once. And it started from a single grave field on a broken planet. One evening, when the wind smelled of rain again, Ava climbed the hill alone. The field below glowed faintly in the starlight. Paper flags waved between the stones, each marked with a name and a promise. She placed Lore's transmitter on the ground and pressed the last working button. It played a soft tone, then silence. She smiled. "Rest now," she whispered. Your voice reached them. The wind carried her words away, mixing them with the hum beneath the soil. For a moment, she imagined every fallen friend standing there beside her. Not ghosts, but echoes strong enough to keep walking. At dawn, the survivors prepared to move. They would travel east to rebuild near the mountains, away from the ash and ruins. Before leaving, Ava turned back one last time. The sun caught the field of stones, and the light spread across them like fire. From far above, it looked like the planet was smiling. Gene asked, "You sure you don't want to stay?" Ava shook her head. "The dead already guard this place. The living need somewhere new." Lena folded her notebook, slipped it into her coat, and smiled faintly. "What will you tell the next world?" Captain? Ava looked toward the horizon. That we lost everything, she said, and still didn't stop singing. When they finally left, the Rust Choir played one last time. Its song rose through the tunnels, up through the cracked earth, and into the open sky where no enemy dared to fly. It was not a song of victory. It was a promise that humanity would always leave an echo, even in silence, even in death. And as the stars listened, they learned something new. Steel can bend, empires can fall, but the sound of the human heart, once heard, never fades.